Good afternoon to everyone. I think everybody's gotten settled in here. I'm Tony Bergantino, Director of the Wyoming State Climate Office and the Water Resources Data System. And welcome to the April Conditions and Outlooks briefing. That's being put on by my office along with the University of Wyoming Extension, the USDA Northern Plains Climate Hub, US Geological Surveys here. We've got the State Engineer's Office, the Bureau of Reclamation, the National Weather Service office in Cheyenne, the Missouri River Basin Forecast Center. And for our special highlight of the month, we also have the National Drought Mitigation Center in Lincoln, Nebraska here. So today it's a full schedule. Again, as always, climate and drought outlooks, conditions, stream flows, reservoir operations, water rights administration, forecasts and outlooks, water supply and flood potential. And then, as I mentioned, we got our highlight of the month, and in that we'll get a good look at the GrassCast product. But we'll start off with the U.S. Drought Monitor that was released this morning. It's reflecting the status of conditions through Tuesday the 22nd. There's been a lot of changes in the last 5 weeks, which is the last time we met. And all of them, with a few slivers of mapping cleanup exceptions, they've all been improvements. Some notable improvements were in the north central part of the state and up into the northwest, where 2 and 3 class improvements occurred. We had single class improvements throughout much of the rest of the state, though. We've still got some of that extreme drought, or D3, lingering down in the southeast. But in the last 5 weeks, the other 2 splotches of D3 that were in the northwest and northeast were removed. So that was a good sign. While we have had improvements over the last several weeks, a comparison of the drought map for last year here on the left to the one on the right here being this year shows that well, much of the Southwest is clear in both years, but otherwise only the very far north is doing better this year than it was last, with a little bit of a nub going down into Sublette County that's a little better now. Last year at this time, there was no extreme drought in Wyoming, but now we've still got almost 8% of the state still in that category over here in the southeast. History of the U.S. Drought Monitor in Wyoming going back to 2000. Currently at almost 52% of the state in one of the D1 through D4 categories, or I guess rather D1 through D3, since we thankfully don't have any exceptional drought, that D4 present in Wyoming. That amount, the amount in actual drought conditions, is down just over 21% from the last time we met back in March. If you take into account all the categories, including that abnormally dry or D0 condition, then a little over 79% of the state is impacted, which is down about 13% from last month. Looking at the last 5 years, plus a few months, you can see a decline in the area impacted by the D3 or extreme drought. Now stand, like I said, just under 8% of the state in that category, and all of it there in the southeast. But even that's a reduction by about half compared to where we were back on the 18th of March. And the amount of state completely devoid of any D category is now at almost 21%, which is an increase of close to 300% in areas since the last webinar. Sublette County has done fairly well over the last 2 weeks, as has bits of central Wyoming, up into the Bighorn Basin a little, northern Park County. We've also seen above median precip. Lincoln County into southern Park County, though, has been quite neglected, and precip there has been under the 10th percentile for the last 14 days. The southeast and northeast have also missed out, and that gray area, that big bunches of area there, is areas that have all seen about the median amounts of precip. Going back to 90 days, 3 months or so, the western part of the state, especially Sublette County or the Upper Green Basin, north up there into the Bighorn Basin and western sides of the basin, done fairly well. Even in the Tongue River Basin east of the Bighorns is not doing too bad. Eastern side of the state, though, along with especially the southern Bighorns, been at or below median for the last 3 months. Just a quick comparison of the water year to date precipitation as a percent of average here on the left, and then calendar year here on the right. Going back to October 1st over here, much of the state somewhat below median, especially the southeast, and then there's that swath running north to south in the central part of the western half of the state that has been normal to about 150% of normal. On the right side, the calendar year somewhat mimics the 90-day that we just saw. It kind of stands to reason since there's only about 3 weeks or so more of additional data to look at it in terms of that. So won't dwell too much on that. Standardized precipitation index. Usually we got the 30-day here across the top, 60 days on the upper right, and then a full year down here on the bottom right. For the last month, fairly even across the state, a little on the dry side in the winds, and then up here in the northwest has been quite a bit below on the dry side. Similar to what we were seeing in that precipitation map before. Also similar to the 14-day depiction, quite dry there in Teton. 60 days, we got wetness in Sublette County, a little bit stronger than we were seeing at the 30 days. So it's a bit more pronounced when you look back, taking into that count that 2 months instead of just the 1 month, and it expands outward around it into Fremont and down into Sweetwater counties. All the southeast is drier, as has been. Down here on the right, western half slightly dry to normal, while the east is drier, especially in the central areas north of Laramie County there, coinciding with that D3 that we were seeing on the drought map. Progression of that area from 1 year to 60 days to 1 month does indicate an improvement of conditions there, but still looking at long-term dryness. 14-day, pretty much out of the single digits for an average temperature for lows the last 2 weeks. Only the very high elevations in contention for that. Nighttime lows in a few places, eastern Bighorn Basin, northeast, some of Platte and Goshen counties, just a little above freezing. Down here on the lower left, we got the last 2 weeks. That's the temperatures as a departure from normal, and it's fairly mixed bag. Higher elevation west being 3 degrees above normal about. Same with the Laramie Range and parts of the Bighorns. Then quite a bit of below normal temperatures, those greens and blues and purples, most in the central and southern part of the state, but also extending up into the northeastern plains. The rest, that gray area, running right about normal. On the flip side here for maximum temperatures, the upper right, only a few, again, of the higher elevations are seeing maxes that are in this case now below the freezing mark. The southwestern plains, the warmest, with highs getting up into the 60s over the last 2 weeks. As a departure, a little bit more consistent with normal temperatures in the far upper green and Bighorn Basins being about normal. The rest being above normal to varying degrees, with the greatest departures being down here in the southeast, starting to sound like a broken record. Some places here approaching 10 degrees or more above normal over the last 2 weeks for your daytime highs. Going on to snowpack. Map over here on the left shows our current snow water equivalent, or SWE, and then the smaller one over here is the conditions on this date 1 year ago, so back in 2024. Currently, the upper green, the Wind, Snake, Yellowstone, Tongue Basins, only one's about within 5% of median. The rest of them below to varying degrees and considerable degrees in places. Into the melt-off part of the curve, so percentages can start to change fairly quickly, but for today, the 7 basins here circling green over here on the left are the only ones experiencing a higher snowpack now than they were 1 year ago today. Remainder doing worse, most notably in the eastern portion of the state, North Platte and powder basins. Let's see, anything else to say? Upper Green, roughly Sublette County is the only basin above normal, and that is expected given how much it stood out on the previous maps showing you earlier, the SPI and the precipitation. The same parameter as the last map, snow water equivalent as a percent of median, but while that last map was showing one basin for each number, this is showing the distribution over the area of the state. The bright dots are the SNOTEL sites, which are used to calculate the percentages on that last map. And that's just done by simply taking an average of all the current amounts at each station that's considered to be representative of the basin. The dark blue lines on the map are those basins that we saw on the previous slide. And pretty apparent on this map that we could use a lot more stations in Teton County and a few other places like up in the winds. The lower elevation snowpack being much higher in terms of a percent of normal. That's that purple band around the bases of some of the various mountain ranges. And those can be a bit misleading since normal snow water equivalent in some places in those areas is down around less than ½ an inch. So it doesn't take much actual snowpack at current times to get a real high percentage of normal. And keep this slide in mind a second as we go to here. This is that basin map overlaying on top of it, just to get a sense of where the snow is and then where the stations are, and then compare that to where the basin delineations are. And I'm just going to try to toggle back and forth a few times here so you can see it, get both sets of info. You can just see on and off where the snow is actually, and then how those numbers and conditions are showing across each of the basins. If you want to look at this a bit more closely, you can kind of do the same comparison at this URL down here on the lower left. And if you run into any questions on how to get that set up, or really anything else on there, how to overlay the right layers, just contact me and I can walk you through it. All right, looking at how this season is done, assuming that there is no further increase, but kind of given the outlook for the next several days, that's a big assumption in one or two basins. But assuming that there is no increase and things stand as they are, we only have had 2 basins so far exceed their median seasonal peak snow water equivalent, that being the Snake and the Upper Green. The Snake River Basin reached a seasonal peak of 108%, and the Upper Green hit 103. One other worth mentioning is the Yellowstone Basin, which did hit its peak yesterday, and that peak was 100% of the seasonal median peak, so right on normal on that one. Also, the Snake, while only hitting 88% of its seasonal median peak, it did do so one day later than the median. And other than those 2 basins, the rest reached their peak snow water equivalent early, ranging anywhere between 2 days earlier in the Lower Green to almost a month, 30 days earlier in the Shoshone. And if you click on any of these basin names or any of the IMG tags over here, sort of highlighted in yellow, it'll take you to a chart of that parameter, which we're going to do here on the next slide. So here's an example chart. If you clicked on the basin name, this one being the Snake that we were talking about, that blue line, that's the maximum of each day's snow water equivalent. The red's the minimum, and then that smoother green line is the normal or the median. The gray line there is last year, which you can see peaked right about the median amount and date. And then this year is the black line, and you can see that we exceeded mean seasonal peak right about there, and then stayed above for about 3 weeks before coming back down below it and then leveling off a little bit now. And currently we're right about at the normal. Sticking with the Snake Basin, these show the peak date and the peak snow water equivalent across each year going back to 81. The orange line for both charts, that's a 10-year centered moving average. And then on the left here, we've got a green line, and on the right, we've got a blue line, but that's the median for the entire period of record. So on the left, the seasonal peak SWE for each year, on the far right here, where you can see this arrow. That's the value that we hit for the peak this year. Let's see what else here. Exceeded it by about inch and a half or so compared to there. Let's see, all right, we got the dates. We'll see later on. There's a chance we could go back up a little bit, but this time of the year with precipitation, you got to be concerned if it falls as rain on snow, as that tends to kind of chew up the snowpack. And going on to what could unkindly be called a two-time loser, we have the Powder River Basin. This is the same format of chart that was on the snake slide two slides ago. You can see here that the gray line, being last year, sits right on top of the red line for much of the year, meaning we set new daily lows for snowpack for almost 4 months or so. And then the black line this year was above that for much of the year, though still less than the median, and it never did reach the seasonal peak. But once melt-off started, that black line dropped below the gray and then below the red line. So for a second year, we're now getting some new lows. Right now, we've just peaked out across the red low line, but as you can see on the basin map earlier, we're still under last year at this time. I guess the only real positive is this makes a good segue to talking about stream flows, which we're going to do now with Aaron Fiaschetti with the USGS. So on to you, Aaron.
Thanks, Tony. So this is a graphic here from our National Water Information Dashboard, and the green dots are what the USGS considers normal. That's somewhere from the 25th percentile to the 75th percentile. So it's just stating it. The central tendency here would be the median. So it's kind of normal for flows to be lower near the 25th percentile, and it's normal for flows to be higher near the 75th. So we got a mixed bag of all conditions here. We got a lot of green, some dark or light blues, which are much above normal, which are in the 75th percentile, and then some oranges, which were below the 25th percentile to the 10th, and then a couple that are much below, that are less than the 10th percentile, and then one all-time low for today, for the day. So this is just a real-time snapshot of kind of what's going on in the state, and it's really all over the place as things begin to melt out. So moving on, Tony, to the next slide. So this is a state duration hydrograph. It's a amalgamation of the reporting gauges throughout the state, and it's the axis is 7-day average runoff in millimeters. So it's a runoff per land unit, but that's not really the important part of this graphic. The important part is to show kind of where we are, and we're really in a time of transition where we're coming out of winter base flows and runoffs beginning to start, depending on where your water supply is coming from, how high an elevation they are, and how much rain you've received, or snowfall that's kind of starting to melt off. But with a lot of the state being in some sort of drought classification or dry, you can kind of see since the water year began in October that flows have been pretty low, around the 25th percentile, and they've kind of chugged along pretty close to that 25th percentile till recently. So that's kind of not unexpected with kind of prolonged dry conditions, and especially when you're looking at that winter period, a lot of that kind of base flow is groundwater contribution. So that's stuff that's affected by longer term drought. So moving on to the next graphic, this is a graphic here from Water Watch where we're just looking at the 28-day average stream flow. Now that most of our sites are reporting, the last couple of times I presented, most of our sites were in some sort of ice condition that we can't report a provisional real-time data. But now that we've kind of been out of ice for some period, we can kind of start to take a look at what's been happening for the last 28 days. So the percentiles are the same as what was described before, but you still kind of see a mixed bag. In the Northwest, you see a lot of greens and light blues showing that sites are normal to above normal for the last 28 days. And then in the Southeast, where the more severe drought classifications are, you see sites being below normal to much below normal. And you can kind of take these with a grain of salt. You could say, well, above normal is good because it's been raining, or you've had a lot of precipitation, or you got a lot of snow. Or it could be the opposite, where you could say, well, above normal is not so good because things are melting off earlier and things are coming out ahead of schedule. So, and it's pretty hard with a graphic like this to kind of go through each one, but we'll kind of surf around the state and look at the conditions here. But and we're kind of starting to begin in the runoff period here, and Tony was talking about the snowpack conditions, and it's always good to keep in mind when you're looking at like a volumetric water year that there's more than one way to put together a good water year. You can have a really great snowpack and kind of some normal rain, or you could have a not so great snowpack and you can have above average spring rains that can kind of really get that volumetric number high. But that's just one kind of metric for a water year. Flows could kind of drop out later in the season and kind of put a lot of stress on irrigation and fisheries later, even with a good water year. So I guess it remains to be seen now, but let's bump around the state to a couple of sites. So here up in the Northwest, the North Fork of the Shoshone River, that was a site that on the previous map for the 28-day average was above normal. And you can kind of see that into March and April. There's kind of some spikes there, probably with some snow melt coming out. But that spike there in the end of March, that you can see that blue shade above it. That's something that's certainly happened before and not uncommon. But right now, kind of flows have been above the median for quite some time, for the last month or so. And you can kind of see, looking back farther in time, around the start of the water year, flows were hanging below the median and closer to the 25th percentile, showing kind of drier conditions from the previous season. So runoff just kind of starting to happen there, just in the beginning phases of it. So moving on to Middle Fork of the Powder near Barnum. Pretty similar conditions, kind of starting the water year. Things were kind of hanging near the 25th percentile during the winter months, and just kind of staying there with kind of depleted groundwater inputs. There's a little bit of missing record there from ice, but you kind of start to see some snow melt into the system and moving flows into periodically above normal conditions here. And now things are kind of starting to drop back off and approach the 25th percentile. So moving over to the North Platte above Seminole Reservoir, that site's a little bit different than the last two, where the flows were very low in October and November into December, and then through the winter months, flows peaked up a little bit. And then I've kind of come back towards that 25th percentile with a little bump in flows there at the end of March, and then back hanging around that 25th percentile. So things continue to be quite low in that location on the North Platte. And then to bounce over to the Snake River above Palisades Reservoir near Alpine. Some very similar conditions to what we've been seeing elsewhere. Low flow conditions throughout the water year till here in January, February, with a little bit of missing record from ice conditions that need to be worked up. And then flows hanging in above normal and above the median since the end of February till current. So moving over to some reservoirs throughout the state. We're just at that beginning phases of starting to have some more water become available, but in the last month that really hasn't shown too much of a change in reservoir storage. So most changes were minor in the positive direction. The reservoirs throughout the states are somewhere between 50% 50 to 80% full, with Fontenelle kind of being the exception there. So that'll be changing here probably in the upcoming weeks and months with more water becoming available. That's all I have, Tony. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. So next up, we have Liz Cresto, who's with the Bureau of Reclamation, to go over reservoir status. Liz?
Yep, I'll go over what's going on, starting with the Bighorn Basin. Releases from Buffalo Bill are 950 CFS. Boysen are also at 950 CFS, and Bull Lake's at 35 CFS. We're really just releasing for irrigation demand right now and don't really plan on changing our outflows much higher than irrigation demand this season. If conditions warranted, if we get a bunch more spring precip, we may need to release above irrigation demand, but it's becoming kind of increasingly unlikely that that's going to be the case. So we did not do any flushing flows from either Buffalo Bill or Boysen this year as well, just based on trying to maintain our water supply in our reservoirs. Next slide. Buffalo Bill is at 60% full. Boysen 70% full, and Bull Lake is at our lowest. It's at 26% full. I think it's the lowest it's been since 2002. So next slide, we'll switch on over to the North Platte. For current releases, we're releasing up to 2000 CFS below Cordis and the Miracle Mile stretch. Gray Reef, 2000 CFS, and then Guernsey and is about 900 CFS, and that 900 CFS is going to fill inland lakes. Releases are anticipated to increase in May to meet that irrigation demand too, and may shut off for a couple weeks later in the season before we ramp up to full irrigation demand later in the summer. So in terms of reservoir contents, Seminole's 49% full, Pathfinder's 56% full, Glendo's 70% full. So basically on the North Platte and the Bighorn Basin, we're releasing for irrigation demand, trying to store as much water during the runoff season as we can into our reservoirs. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Unfortunately, that we've had already some water rights administrations. So for more on that, it's Michelle Hubbard with the State Engineer's Office. Michelle.
Thank you, Tony. As much as I love being here, I wish it wasn't in April. So my name is Michelle Hubbard. I'm with the State Engineer's Office. This is just an overview of the 4 water divisions in the state. There we have a new Division 1 superintendent in Division 1. Obviously, his name's Josh DeBerard. And so with that, we'll move to the next slide. There are 4 calls in Division 1. The Little Laramie River is being regulated to 1875, 1881, and 1897. Then the Laramie River is again being regulated to the 1875, 81, and 79. And then in Division 3, there is 1 call under regulation, and that is Gooseberry Creek, regulated to 1907. So that is all the calls for now. Hopefully we get some good precip and I won't have to be back, but we'll see. We'll see how the weather goes. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Michelle. Hopefully we don't see you again. All right, looking at forecasts and outlooks, we've got Tony Anderson over at the National Weather Service in Cheyenne. Tony?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tony Anderson. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist at Cheyenne. And we'll just take you through some of the outlooks and what we're looking at for the next 3 days to 3 months. Right now, looking at this slide, we're just looking at what are our concerns at a given time of year, and the yellow area highlights the current time frame. It's springtime. We're moving into what should be severe thunderstorms and tornado time, if we get enough high intensity rainfall with those storms, we might get into some flash flooding. Moving into a little bit early for river flooding, but it could happen if we get an early runoff. So we got a little bit of river flooding issues, but that will probably be next month that we're more concerned with those, or we will have been concerned with those sorts of things. We have a fairly small window for river flooding. Next slide, please. Looking over the next 7 days, we're moving into what looks like a fairly active period across the state. There's good, Tony said earlier in the meeting, there's actually rainfall going on now in the northern part of the state. There's good chances of rain, snow, and thunderstorms throughout the week. And the best chances statewide are probably in that Sunday to Monday timeframe. And the moisture seems to be favoring the northern half to 2/3 of the state. And that, if that forecast materializes, that could put a dent in some of our drought categories that we looked at earlier. That's the area that's been improving the fastest, and a good shot of 1.5 inches of rain could put a dent in some of those drought categories. So we'll see how that transpires. Next slide. Looking out over the 8 to 14 day time frame, these are not forecasts, these are just outlooks. They're giving you an idea of probabilities, what's more likely to happen versus less likely to happen. And in this case, on the temperature side, that is a very, very strong signal that is almost centered on Wyoming. That is a extremely strong signal for above normal temperatures over that 7-day period. On the precipitation side, not so much of a signal there. We've got a weak signal in the northeast, but otherwise, the signals are all saying near normal. Our best forecast in those conditions would be long-term climatological averages. So interesting that we have a very strong signal on one side and really not much of a signal on the other. But look out for warm temperatures over that 7 days. Next slide, please. Jumping out to a 1-month time frame, we're still seeing a pronounced temperature signal for above normal temperatures, not as strong as in that 8 to 14 day period. But here we've got a weak to moderate signal that's strengthening as you move south. So over 2/3 of the state looks to be in a moderate signal for above normal temperatures. So look for above normal temperatures for well into May. On the precipitation side, we do have a signal this time, and a fairly good one. We've got a weak signal in the southeast, a strong signal in the southwest, and then a moderate signal covering the bulk of the state. And so, unfortunately, it is a below normal signature, which is really not what we want when we're trying to get ourselves out of a drought. So above normal temperatures, below normal precipitation is not the forecast I prefer to give, but it's the one that the data is showing us. Next slide, please. Okay, one more time, we're going to jump out to a 3-month outlook. This is for basically the early parts of summer. And here again, we've got a strong signal for above normal temperatures in the southwest part of the state, and that weakens to the northeast. So we've got weak in the northeast, and then we go through moderate and strong down to very strong in the southwest. So fairly tight gradient on those signals, but that's a pretty strong signal where the climatological indicators are indicating a warm summer. And as far as precipitation goes, here again, we've got a moderate below normal signal covering the entire state. So once again, not what we're looking for to get out of drought, but maybe the signals will be wrong and those lower probability events will occur. That's not what I can tell you though. Next slide, please. Okay, looking out to the flood potential update, and this is a very boring slide because there's really not much going on here. And if this is a probability of flooding over the next 90 days, and in this particular slide, anything that had a 50% chance of flooding would turn a color other than green. And as you can see, there's nothing there that is not green. So all of our forecast points on the rivers over the next 90 days, we are not showing a 50% chance of flooding. We have the ability to look at lower probabilities. I had to go down to 5% to get anything to change color. So very low probability of flooding. And that is somewhat disconnected with the snowpack that we've looked at, in that we had a pretty good snowpack, at least until 3 weeks ago. But I believe that drought from last year is seriously tapping our soil resources, and we've dried out the soil so badly that a lot of the snow melt is going to get absorbed before it hits our rivers. And I think the models are picking that up. So that's why I think we're seeing this, even though we have relatively normal snowpack through much of the state. I believe that's the end of my slides. I do want to say this will be my last WCMT as a presenter, I believe. I am retiring, and it's been a pleasure serving you all. And I look forward to seeing you in a different venue sometime in the future.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks for all you've done on the group. We're gonna miss you. And we'll jump over to Alex Carruthers with the Missouri Basin River Forecast Center to look at the water supply outlook.
Thanks, both Tonys. So as Tony A stated, given the current mountain snow conditions, in addition to all of the really dry soils, the overall flood threat for Wyoming, this melts. So both the NRCS and the National Weather Service produce water supply outlooks, which represents the total volume of water expected to pass a given location during the spring and summer months. I will note we do use two different methods, so sometimes the actual numbers themselves can look different, but they represent the same thing. The dots on this map on the slide indicate locations where water supply outlooks are produced by the National Weather Service. These outlooks are issued once a month at the beginning of the month, so this forecast was valid as of 1 April. We issue these forecasts January through June, and what we are showing is the April through September volumes, specifically for the Columbia and Missouri River basins, and then the April through July volumes for the Colorado Basin. The point of the map here is just to show that many locations across Wyoming are forecasted to see only 50 to 90%, the orange and yellow dots, or 90 to a little over 100% of the normal unregulated volume compared to the last 30-year average. I will note, compared to the briefing that I gave in February, there was some slight improvement in the conditions, especially in the Green River Basin. But that said, the primary concern this year continues to be the forecasted lower than normal runoff volumes for most locations. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And for our highlight of the month, we have, and I will stop sharing here so that you can get connected. But we have Brian Fuchs, who's with the National Drought Mitigation Center in Lincoln, Nebraska. And Brian is also one of the national authors on the for the U.S. Drought Monitor. So today he's going to be talking about grass casts, and once we get connected, he'll take it away.
All right, Tony, thank you for the invite and thank you for having me today. I'm assuming that you can see my presentation. Okay.
You look good.
Okay, we'll just dig right into it. So, yeah, as Tony said, I'm with the National Drought Mitigation Center, housed at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. I'm a climatologist by training, and I have been a longtime U.S. Drought Monitor author, almost 20 years now, putting together that map that everyone looks at each week, and a big part of what I do here, but not the only thing. So, as we get into talking about not the only thing, so this is a joint project. As you can see, I didn't even list myself first on this team because I definitely was not first. But this is a group from USDA with the climate hubs, Colorado State, Arizona, and National Drought Mitigation Center, University of Nebraska, and others have participated in this, the idea of grass cast. So what we were hearing from livestock producers was, we have this information out there, and we just saw, what the outlooks were going to look like, and the temperatures and precipitation signals that we're seeing in the models. How can I use that, as if I'm a rancher or livestock producer? How can I use that information to better inform my decision making on my operation? So that's where GrassCast came about. And so okay. So yeah, just a little cartoon here. In the spring, livestock producers, they really wait. They wait for green up. They've waited through the winter. They're waiting for calves to drop. But most importantly, they're waiting to know, will there be enough grass for this summer? And with that being said, over time, forecasts and outlooks have gotten better. Better computing power, faster computers. We're using more data, different kinds of data. All this has improved our forecasting skill. But the one thing that really lacks is, we can tell you temperature-wise pretty accurately. Hey, you're going to see above normal temperatures, below normal temperatures, and we saw that in some of the previous slides. The one thing that is still lacking a lot of skill is really pinpointing precipitation, and we all know that from north to south, east to west, even within a particular county, there can be a very broad spectrum of precipitation amounts that are observed and recorded, and so that can change what it really means on the ground. And so with that in mind, we were thinking of that as the GrassCast team came about. But a lot of the weather and information out there for a producer and how they're trying to implement it into their operations, it can be hard to understand. What is a model? What are these outlooks? What goes into it? And then I talked about skill already, and just how much confidence can I put in these tools? And then specifically, what do these mean for the ag sector? A lot of times individuals are left to interpret that for what they think they mean, but also what it actually means for an operation. And then also, is the information provided, is there too much uncertainty to make specific agricultural based decisions to go forward? And so again, the team that was organized, we tried to provide an answer to much of this when and again, when I finally do get the information, is it too late to be useful? A lot of times, okay, we're going to have this much rain in July. Well, at that point in time, if I'm a producer, I've already had to determine if I can hold the numbers I have. Should I increase my herd, decrease my herd, etc. So the timeliness for decision making is also key, especially those top three. So with GrassCast, this was a tool for forage production expectations. I guess it's a model based on current weather to date and research that's went along with this. And so with that in mind, we've also incorporated some of the future weather scenarios. What happens if I have normal precipitation? What happens if I'm above or below normal? We capture all three of those. And then with using this gridded data, this gridded information, you can drill down into your local area, your sub-county level, and you can get an idea of what the model, what this tool for grassland productivity is going to be in your area. And then also, with that being said, it's also going to give you an idea of how much higher or lower it's going to be. So you look at the map on the left here, and you can see the color wheels. So pretty much the yellows, the greens, and the lightest blues, you're anywhere from plus or minus 15% of what your typical production would be. But if you're in some of those red areas, and this is an old map, so this is from 2020. So this is not current information, but looking at this information, you can get an idea where some of the areas that have been wetter are, and productivity is supposed to be higher than normal. You know, in this instance, you're looking at some of that Red River Valley in Texas, you know, parts of the Dakotas into Nebraska. But then you can also see those areas where production is really anticipated to be, you know, almost a third below normal, if not greater. And in this instance, it was in, you know, the plains of Colorado and Wyoming, as well as that down into the panhandle of Texas and eastern New Mexico. So there is some information, again, and this was just on one of the products. So we'll get into, you know, what we're looking at here. So again, I talked about the scenarios that we basically start in the middle, that, you know, hey, if things are normal from where we're at right now, this is what we anticipate productivity to be through the end of August. The research has shown that, you know, precipitation past the end of August really isn't going to do much for that current production year. So that's why the last forecast or run of this model comes out at the end of August. And we just started those up in April. So we've had a couple of these come out for this year. But you also see the two scenarios. If I'm anticipating above normal precipitation, I can see what my productivity is looking like. Or if I'm looking at below normal precipitation, there's a strong signal in the data. You know, we saw those outlooks earlier. What can I anticipate? And so this is kind of where we started out with GrassCast, kind of the what if situation, using precipitation to this point in time and then projecting above normal, below normal, and then near normal precipitation, and what that would mean for productivity going forward. And so again, we talked about the medium blue, 15 to 30% more production. And you can see the area it's talking about is in that little square. The turquoise area is 5 to 15% more. So in this scenario, you know, near normal to above normal precipitation, you're going to have anywhere from 5 to 30% more production anticipated for this area. And this came out here in mid-May. So it's kind of giving you information all the way through the end of August, even though it's only mid-May in this scenario. But then it also gives you the next scenario that, okay, hey, if we have much below normal precipitation, we could lose up to 5 or 15% of productivity of the forage production between now and the end of August too. So really it gives you an opportunity to hedge your bets a little bit. It gives you an opportunity to incorporate forecast information and some of the outlook information into your decision making as well. And you know, hey, I know we're normal, but it really looks good. You can kind of start hedging your bets a little bit too. So this is the website. It's at grasscast.unl.edu. Like I said, we started at the beginning of April this year, and this is a bi-weekly product. So, excuse me, every 2 weeks a new scenario will come back, and that's with the information updated. So you can see that you know, we clicked on an area here in Kansas, and it tells you the information. A little pop-up box will come up. So if you drill down to your area and you're looking at your county or area of your interest, it tells you in the 3 scenarios, you know, 26% more forage production with above normal precipitation, 11% more with near normal, and only about 12% less if we had below normal precipitation. So again, as a producer, you can start making decisions based on this before it's too late to react or to do something. And here's another scenario for May of 22 in the same location. Again, the above normal was 11% more, near normal 1%, and below normal was showing 19% less. So again, this just shows you from year to year, again, in this 6 mile by 6 mile grid or area that we're looking at, is really important to pay attention for your area. And again, you know, you look at the counties size in Kansas compared to, you know, Wyoming. Wyoming has some big counties. So I just can't tell you, hey, Sublette County, well, that may mean nothing to you. If I can drill down to a 6 by 6 area, 6 mile by 6 mile area in a county, I can give you better information. And so, you know, here's a good example of what's in this pop-up box. And so looking at this area, you know, it's talking about 21% more, 4% less. And this is a current map. This is something I just pulled up today. But it's also telling you, you know, since October 1st, since the water year began, we've shown that this area is around 2.37 inches. And again, I mentioned how variable it could be. So this is based off of that 6 mile by 6 mile grid. And it tells you, again, what has been received, and what your average is 3.67 inches. So in this situation, all three of this are the area has already been below normal since October 1st. But the three scenarios is, if it's above normal, you're still going to anticipate 21% more production. If you're near normal, you're probably going to see slightly less. And if you're well below normal, you could see 25% less production for this year. And when we go forward on this, there's more information. You can see on that box, there's kind of a scroll down bar. And so this is telling you what it's assuming and making those calculations. So this is saying that, you've had 2.37 inches of precipitation. Your average for this point in time is 3.67 inches. And the map is assuming, again, on the far left sample, 13.68 more inches of rain till the end of August. And that's, again, based off of historical data that's being incorporated into the model, actual historical data that's been recorded. And so then in the middle scenario, it's saying, again, you've had 2.37, should have had 3.67. And to get to that near normal production, which is in this case was 4% less, you would still need 10 inches between now and the end of August. And then again, this is the current calendar year. And then the last one is saying, hey, we think it's going to stay dry. And so it's basically telling you, okay, I've had that 2.37 out of 3.67. If I only get right at 7 more inches, I'm going to have that reduced productivity of about 24% less. Now, the one problem with this is it doesn't tell you how that rain's going to come. Is it going to be a gully washer that, you got half of that 10.8 in one event and then it stays dry? That's the skill we can't tell you, but based off of the model, based off historical precipitation and production data, we can give these scenarios that, okay, I can go and look at other information, other tools, and start making educated assessments of what I should do on my own operation. The other part of this that we're working on and we're hoping to release here shortly, hopefully yet in this production year, is we're going to start showing, along with this information here, probabilities of reaching those sums for the rest of the calendar year. So, right now, this tells me how short I am or where I'm at. Is that above or below normal, and what I need for above normal, near normal, or below normal productivity. But it doesn't tell me the probability of how likely it is that I get 13.68 inches or 10.08 or 6.96. So we're going to add probabilities to this as well. So when you get to the end of this, not only will you need to have an idea of what your target amount is, but how likely is it to get there? If I say 10.08 to be near normal productivity, but the probability of getting to that is 80%, that tells me a lot. But if the probability is only 40%, that also tells me, hey, even though this is the near normal situation. And again, these will all change every time the map is updated. So we'll have an updated precipitation value for the total, the average, and what is needed going forward for these three scenarios, but also those probabilities. So again, it's not a tool that you want to look at one time and be done with it. You do want to follow it each time you're going through your season. And again, the later you are in the season, the more information we have. So it's going to really get dialed in that the probabilities are going to be more pronounced. And also you're going to have a lot more information of what's already happened, because that window of change gets shortened as you get closer to the end of August. So some of the limitations and opportunities, grass casts, you can't see shrubs or trees. So that's tough. It can't tell the difference between desirable forage and weedy ones. So if there's short grass or anything like that, it doesn't differentiate. It can't. It doesn't account for management. So if you've overgrazed or you've had several dry years, some of those antecedent conditions are really hard to bring into the tool. And so it has a hard time accounting for those. So those are, again, management decisions by each producer. They're going to know their operation better. And that's why you may have one ranch looks one way and another ranch looks another. It could be due to their management. And it shouldn't be used as your sole source of information. There was a lot of experts already presenting before me, sharing a lot of information, where to go to find this information. This should be one tool in your toolbox to have an informed decision and figure out what you're going to do. But it's trying to incorporate several different pieces of information for you. Just to give an idea quickly of what production could look like, in an average year, if you're expecting 1,000 pounds per acre and in good management practices, you should leave half. So that basically tells you have 500 pounds of forage. And you take another half because some of it gets trampled or whatnot. So you end up with about a quarter of what your production is. So about 250 pounds. During a drought year, you start out with 30% less. So that number starts at 700. If you leave 500 still, because you want to leave half of what's available for conservation, that takes you down to 200 pounds left. But if half gets trampled, again, you're down to 100%. So you can really see the impact of drought on this forage production, especially on actively grazed parcels of ground. And 100 pounds versus 250 pounds, I don't need to explain that to producers what that means. Basically, that's a 60% grazing loss, which is a 30% total production loss. So that's my quick overview. Again, to learn more about GrassCast, you can go to the website. Again, reach out to the teams. Danelle has, I should have updated this slide, but there's others that we can reach out to. Justin Durner, if you know Justin, he can be the lead, and myself or anyone on this team can help you out. And basically this is looking at past historical production, ANAP data. We're looking at conditions here in the present, and then we're looking at again the future forecast. And just one plug for a tool here at the National Drought Mitigation Center. We do have this drought risk on the ranch planning guide. It's basically a generic planning guide for any livestock producer. They can put their information in and help build scenarios as to help them with their management operations. It's a downloadable PDF that you can get to right off our website, or contact me. I can email that to you. And with that, I'll throw up my email address and my phone number. And feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions regarding the drought work we do, GrassCast, the ranch planning information, etc. If I can't answer it, I'll get you in touch with the right person who can. Thank you.
Thanks, Bryant. I will see if I can switch back over here. Oops. And with that, I will turn it back over to Christy Hansen, who can lead us into the Q&A session.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks as always to our presenters, especially to Tony Anderson. We wish you all the best in your retirement. As a reminder to all of you, we do have, as you can see, the contact information for each of our presenters here on this slide in case you have follow-up questions for them and want to reach out. We will also post the recording of today's webinar along with a PDF of the slides on the Wyoming Drought Information and Resources website. And with that, I will stop the recording and we'll do some Q&A.